If you had one sentence to elevator pitch Christianity to someone, what would you say? What is the one core idea that sets Christianity apart, that makes it distinctive? Hey everyone, I'm Colin, the resident nerd and Bible scholar here at the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. Growing up in a fundamentalist branch of Christianity, I think I would have answered this question along the lines of God's holiness, that God is holy and therefore we are called to be a set apart people, to act differently than the world around us. And that sounds really good and churchy, but that's not the way the Bible presents it. See, when someone came to Jesus, the main person of our faith, the final authority on what Christianity is about, right? When somebody came to Jesus and asked, what is the most important commandment? He had over 600 commandments that he could have picked from. And he said the most important commandment was to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then he said, if I have to add a second one, it would also be love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus defined the entirety of his belief system. He distilled it down to just love God and love people. And the funny thing is, it doesn't even just stop there. I mean, there's so much that Jesus could have said there, and there's so much that we can talk about that he just decided, let's boil it down to love God and love people. But let's go even a little bit further and look at how Paul distilled it. If we go to Galatians chapter 5, verse 14, he says, for all the law, all the Torah, all of our scriptures is fulfilled in this one word, even this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So Jesus said, love God, love people. Paul said, actually, just love people. And that's so fascinating to me because with the way I was raised, we focused on God over people. We had actually said things like, you can't truly love people unless you're loving God. Or the way it was often put is your horizontal relationships can't be right until your vertical relationship is right. You can't be right with people until you're right with God. But apparently that's not true, at least not according to the Bible and the New Testament's greatest theologian. Now, that's certainly not to say that loving God and obeying God isn't important, or that Paul didn't think it was important. He very obviously thought it was. But when given the chance to distill his belief system into one thing, he just defined it as love people. That idea is certainly not novel to Paul or even to Jesus. Variations of the Golden Rule have existed throughout multiple religions and philosophies across history. It had been around for hundreds upon hundreds of years before Jesus came onto the scene. But let's not lose sight of the fact that Paul distilled down Christianity into just this one thing, and that is love people. It's so easy as Christians to get into this thought process of, I need to love people by preaching at them. And a lot of times that just ends up becoming my shoving my beliefs down your throat and calling it love. Now, there are a lot of things that I disagree with Gary Chapman on, but one thing that I learned from reading the love languages books that he had is that different people experience love differently. And I can't try to show love to someone in the way that I want to be loved and then get mad at them if that's not the way that they receive love, right? Different people see different things as loving. You might have one person whose idea of love is to give gifts to someone else, and then you have someone else whose idea of love is quality time with each other, right? They're stereotypes, but you get the idea. We so often get mad at somebody because we're trying to express love the way that we actually want to receive it when they receive it in a different way. Now, if that's true in dating and marriage relationships, well, it's also true when it comes to religion. You can't just define love however you want to define it, and that gives you an out to cram your beliefs down somebody else's throat and call it love. You have to actually look at how do they want to be treated. And most of the time, it's basically just like Paul said here in Galatians 5, as yourself. It's amazing to me how many Christians will whine and complain about the way that other belief systems are represented. They say, I don't want you shoving your sexuality at me. I don't want these beliefs taught to my children in school. And yet they have that exact same presentation of their belief system to other people. They just don't like it when it's somebody else's beliefs. But the problem isn't the beliefs as much as the presentation. Love your neighbor as yourself. That is the core of Christianity. And if you don't want someone else shoving their beliefs at you, maybe you shouldn't do the same to them. Maybe you can just find a way to get along with them. I'm not saying don't ever share your faith, But we need to actually care about the human being in front of us, legitimately for who they are, and not just see them as another notch on the belt of somebody to get saved and send to heaven. Putting your mission first is not the best way to love people. Loving people is the best way to love God, at least according to the Bible. So the next time you have a decision between making a hard line on your position or loving the person in front of you, choose to love the person in front of you, and that will be a better witness than any gospel tract ever could be.